Welcome to the Enlighten Up podcast, where I am going to take you into a deep exploration of what it means to exist in this current reality. We are going to raise your vibes, open your mind, expand your heart, and dive deep into the wondrous mysteries and possibilities of this lifetime. There's been a spiritual catalyst that has set in motion the awakening process of many across the globe to return to the knowingness of self and unite what has been separated. Together, we're going to bring light into that darkness. We're going to remember the joy of living. But most of all, we're going to turn up the volume of our own eternal power and do the thing we're here to do. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Enlighten Up podcast. I hope you're all doing well this evening. I am excited to have Rebecca Rose back on the show with me. For those of you who are not aware, Rebecca is a multidimensional energy, intuitive, seer, and channel. She awakened to spontaneous light language channeling several years ago and works with a powerful team of elemental, indigenous, angelic, and galactic guides that assist us all on our awakening journey. Rebecca, thanks so much for coming back. How are you doing tonight?
I'm so happy to be here again with you. Yeah, it's been a while. So I think it's been over a year since I've been back with you here. So
I think so. Yeah, at least a year. At least a year. So you've been busy, but not busy in the way that I think most people would deem busy.
Yeah, I've been on a little sabbatical. I've been away, and like this is my first interview, I think, in like probably 6 months, maybe since May. I don't know. Yeah. So
what kind of happened there? Like, I know that well, obviously those who are familiar with you know that you've gone through some pretty extreme experiences from childhood throughout.
Yeah. Well, this summer, I had a bit of a health crash, and I had all these plans for doing some other things, and I was really quite humbled by the whole experience. And it was things that in my, things that have added up over time. Nothing, I didn't have like COVID or a flu or a virus or a broken leg or whatever, but it was more like my biological systems are showing a lot of wear and tear because of, really a lot of trauma in my background. And then many years 3 decades as a really hardcore endurance athlete up in the mountains of Colorado and so on and so forth. So I was just having a lot of just super chronic fatigue, and I've discovered my cortisol levels were really high, and a lot of hormonal imbalance, endocrine system problems, neurotransmitter problems, and on and on and on. When one system is off, especially, I'm 49 years old. It's like we can kind of pull it off for a while, but then there's this point of diminishing returns. So I've been, like I said, really humbled to pull my energy back out of the light realms a little bit and deal more with the physical plane. It's like, oh, here I am. I hope I can get out of bed today. That was my summer. So it was like sort of, I felt like everyone was off having wonderful adventures. And I was like, I think I can make it to the toilet today. I might be able to step outside the house today. I don't know. It's very, I guess I keep saying humbling. It's very humbling.
Yeah, well, I mean, just even when you think about taking time to heal, most people will think, okay, there's got to be some regimen or something. But when you talk about it that way, where you're just like, okay, I'm going to get out of bed and just do the bare necessities, like going to the bathroom.
Like, I think I can pull myself to the next room today. But yeah, I mean, and a lot of I felt really lonely, and I did have very, some fearful moments about what's my path here? Is this the new normal for me? Especially for somebody who, I've done multi-day adventure racing, in the mountains of Colorado, right? Like on my mountain bike and multi-sport stuff that I trained for. And then to be like, oh my God, I can't even believe I'm the person who used to be able to do that stuff. I can't do anything.
Well, I mean, life has a way, or I should say, spirit even has a way, our own soul design has a way of orchestrating it so that there's everything that we've identified ourselves with
Oh
gets
yeah.
stripped away
Yeah.
so that we can finally get to the parts of us that we haven't allowed
Yeah.
ourselves to connect with.
I think that's really true. And you know, as that kind of an athlete, you know, competing at a high level with different teams over those years, where we can be, and I'll claim this for myself. Like, I think I was super out of touch with my body for so long. It was just this machine that could get me from point A to point B with a lot of endorphins in between, and a lot of bike crashes and emergency room visits in between. But anyway, like, it's brought me back into like right here, right now. Like, if I don't have a vessel that is really functioning, I can't do the work I came here to do. And for me, it really, you know, put me in touch with like my mission. I have a mission. I'm not ready to like, this for me, this is not my life now. I like this, it is my life now, but this isn't the normal for the next couple decades before, you know, the end. I really put me in touch with what I want to be doing here. And I was before, but this was like lighting a fire under me even more about it, and like getting more bold about what I thought that mission was and is. So
So through all of this time that you kind of took for yourself on the sabbatical, how has your mission deepened, like in a sense of, I guess, more clarity, deeper understanding? What's kind of come
yeah,
through for you?
it's so about disclosure, and like using all of my, you know, all the experiences that I've gone through in the dark programs, all the projects and all the SSP stuff, and et cetera, that people have come to know me for, is really, I didn't go through that stuff to die then or to be silent now. I came to be a voice of disclosure. That's very much the keynote of what I'm doing here, and
Yeah.
why I didn't die back then. You know, I've had people say to me, how come you didn't, why am I not institutionalized? Why am I, you know, really as well as I am? And I feel like that's got to do with the light realms and my soul's sort of script. Um, yeah. Anyway, it just put a really fine point on my path here and why I want to be on this planet right now doing this work.
Okay, just because I think that we all go through this part where we maybe don't understand the value of our own physical bodies on this journey and what they are here to teach us through this deeper connection of just allowing your body to stop, rest, not have to do anything, not have to meet any agenda, not meet any appointments, not get up for any reason other than if that was what it wanted to do. How has that kind of deepened your relationship with your own body? Because it's an important part of the journey in
Yeah.
also, I believe, in being able to pull in more light, and activate that is to have that deeper connection with the body.
Yeah, you said that really well. And I have been like the poster child of not resting. You know, I mean, I'm going to bring this back again and again to, you know, well, the trauma in my early life, which was really extensive, and then, you know, 3 decades of hardcore training and racing. You don't rest. You get to the end of the night on your bike alone out there because you're not going to stop. That's been it's a hard thing for me to undo, even now, but it's allowed me to like go, okay, pulling back in from some of the, you know, maybe too many commitments or too much of a busy work schedule or whatever it is. Trying to be all things to all people, is, we know that has a bad end. You know, like better boundaries and so on and so forth, like really basic stuff, but things that I needed to go back and relearn or re-listen to or rethink. And I've been had to do that, humbled by that.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so this journey of healing, and we're going to get into, I know a lot, you've covered some repressed memories from your childhood, from I think the SSP, the Secret Space Program, and you've got some new information that you're going to want to share later on. But before we get into that, this journey, this idea of like going into the places that we don't want to go, avoiding the very thing that we're really being called to, but we don't want to admit it, or we don't want to give it as much truth that we deep down know. How was that for you? Because I'm sure this is something that you knew you needed to do for a little while.
Mm. You mean the coming out with the material that I have, or do you mean the summer part?
Taking the time to stop, and really just go into that complete divine feminine ultimate stillness.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I think it was I would keep going until I just collapsed, and that's what had to happen for me. Yeah. So it's not very graceful.
No.
How does that play into the mission?
Well, here's the thing. There's so many of us that will go along our journey and we'll do certain healing. Like we'll work with the things that, there are certain levels that we can go to, but there might be that really deep level that we know. Some of us may know we've got to do it, but we don't want to do it. And some of us may believe that, well, I don't have anything else I need to really go into right now. I don't need to go into healing. What has been your experience with this, and what has kind of been shone light on for you around this kind of concept? Because a lot of people struggle with it.
I would say, I would immediately take that actually into the work with all the memory matter that I didn't want to face for so many years. Why do you think I was on the bike all those times and all those nights and all those hours every week? Like it was my full-time job. I had all of this stuff that was hunting me and haunted me and that I didn't really want to face, and fragments of memory and really depraved things that I didn't know where they came from. And I never ever, remember when I talked to you before I was going to make my first video on my YouTube channel, and I was like, I think I'm going to die. Do I have to do this? So my thing about like, how do I relate with that particular blueprint of like wanting to avoid is all over that part of my story. Like, I don't want to work with my past. Can I just go till I drop so I can just keep avoiding that? But of course, it's like put me here in a way. Like, if you would have said like 5 years ago, is this your mission to be talking about this stuff? I would have been like, number one, I'm not sure what you're talking about. I don't have anything like that in my past, do I? Nor do I want to be, it's been really hard for me to come out of those little shadow places where I like to hide out. Like, it's a really easy place for me to not, I don't want to be in the limelight. It's like, oh, it's so it's so much exposure. It's so vulnerable. Like, I think for all of us, but maybe that was always my, like as a quiet child who learned to stay out of trouble and out of abuse by like really hiding out somewhere in my very early years. Like, I don't want to be talking about this stuff. Like I said before in other interviews, I'm the crazy lady who thinks she was in Mars and like these other places as a whatnot soldier doing stuff. Like, that's pretty wild. So I can relate to it more from that vantage point. Or what is it that I don't want to face in my life right now? Gosh, there's always, that particular theme is hot for all of us as we go through the different chapters of our development, isn't it? Like, our resistance to being who we are and who we came here to be is enormous. Enormous.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think any of us truly understand the power of becoming who you really are, really allowing that to shine through and not being ashamed of all the parts of you that are a bit darker or are part of a darker experience that you just want to pretend never happened. I believe this, and I'm sure you're probably going to be in agreement here, but to me, it's those parts of us from the darkness that ultimately become our greatest gifts here. And they hold our greatest gifts. And so if we have enough courage to go into that, we are blessed, I think, in many ways that we never even knew were possible. And so going in, and that's the whole point too, when we think about the darkness, the darker the darkness, the greater its ability to hold a higher light quotient. So, and then that's almost like that alchemical experience of when you're in that darkness and you're in your own darkness and your own shadows and all the traumas and the pains and the shame and everything around that. And through that, just even facing it, allowing yourself to be there, all of a sudden you're starting to pull in a little bit more light. and because you're starting to gain access to parts of you haven't allowed yourself to have access to, and the light comes with it. And you are able to not just shine light on things you maybe not have wanted to see, but you start to shine light on things you didn't even know were possible for yourself.
Yeah, so true. That's so true. And we scripted in, I mean, we scripted in all this for ourselves. So who are we to like back away from the soul's journey that we signed up for in this lifetime? I signed up to do this, right? So I'm sort of selling out if I don't like show up to the table to do what I came to do, even if it's like terrifying and horrible. And I just, it's not anymore. Like doing this and being public about it all is not so hard for me anymore. But
so let's talk about that, because that's a big deal. And I think that's something that we start to realize, but you won't ever come to that conclusion, or realization, I should say, until you've moved through it. So the scariest part is just a starting. Like that's the hardest part. And for you, when you kind of look back on yourself, what would be the one thing you would tell yourself back then that you know today, when you're like, okay, I need to do my first YouTube video. I need to put myself out there on video and speak my truth.
Yeah. Gosh. I mean, I hear I see the little inner child coming up. Mommy, what are we going to do? You're going to be okay, sweetie. It's going to be fine. You're going to still have friends. You're not going to be killed. No one's going to hate you. They might think you're kooky, but that's going to be okay. Like, yeah, it is. And it's so much like for me, for all of us, this is, I think you said this too, like learning that it's okay for not everyone to like us or agree with us. Like, I don't have to keep taking care of other people's experiences and their feelings.
Yeah.
And their belief systems and their paradigms and their limitations.
And a lot of us hold that wound, people pleasing, getting along just to get along. Yeah. Don't ruffle anyone's feathers. Yeah. Don't say anything that isn't appropriate or not allowed to be spoken of. You need permission for this. You need permission for that. And, I believe that when we start speaking our truth and we start honoring like who we are, that you start to feel more alive. Have you noticed that you're actually starting to feel more alive inside than?
Definitely. I feel I'm so much more alignment with who I am and who I wanted to be when I came here. I just had all these layers to kind of, like a mole coming up from below ground into the light, oh gosh, this is like, there's so much junk to get out of the way here. All this programming, the endless programming, the endless conditioning, and all these depravities that have been, injustices that have been done to us to keep us away from ourselves. So that's certainly part of my story with all this.
Yeah. Because I think you don't realize how much you're not living until you really start to live from that true place of your own truth, who you are. Yeah. Without fear. Well, I don't want to say without fear. You do it despite the fear.
Yeah, maybe honoring, you can have a place at the table, but it doesn't have to, run the whole show.
So, okay, so for anyone who isn't already subscribed to Rebecca's YouTube channel, the link is in the show notes, but you recently put out a video updating everyone since, I think May was your last video, somewhere around that time, right? May or June? Yeah. And you shared some of your memories that have come back. There were some memories in there that were completely unthinkable to the normal person. From being a child, when you were, 4 years old?
Yeah. I mean, this stuff started really early for me, but I think those memories were, four-ish. Mm-hmm.
What do you want to share right now with the audience regarding anything that has kind of come through that was really tough? I mean, did it take a little while for you to get to that point where the memories started to come back? How long did it take for you to be in that space of just complete surrender and not needing to do anything?
With that particular field of memories? I got to think about this. With the things like that relate with my family, it relates with your family and not just strangers. It's way harder to integrate. It's harder to face. So that stuff with my godfather took a long time. along. And you see, like, there was that huge gap and I think I said that in the video, there's this huge gap in like the last video and then the next video in which I knew I would be talking about this. And like, I didn't really want to, I was talking about my father and like how much he knew about the Black Ops stuff that I was sent into, like how he had really sold me into the projects. And then my godfather and being, you know, trafficked into these elite pedophilia, child porn things. And then later, you know, going into the space program and so on and so forth. Yeah, the things about my family took a little while to want to get public about, because it's so painful. It's like one of those things I want to like be in denial about the fact that my family had anything to do with what ended up happening to me. But in fact, they're deeply embedded. My father was my mother, both of them, and extended family were very much a part of what, you know, set the stage for me to be sent into space. Yeah.
I don't know if they're equally the same or if one helps the other, but where are you finding it harder to gain access to memory-wise? Is it the childhood stuff? Is it the secret space program stuff? Or is it all of it?
It's a battle. It's a battle memory stuff where it's easier for me to remember things in which I was victimized, but rather than when I was, you know, I became out in space what could be called a super soldier. I prefer to call it a psychic combat slave. But the parts where I was made to become a perpetrator, I mean, basically you're trained into a weaponized, you're groomed into a weaponized asset for the dark forces, and you're killing people, you're killing things, you're at war. It's a combat game for them, and we're defending assets for different alliances and so on and so forth. I was part of what I was doing was with Mars Defense Force, and we were you know, defending the base, but also on offense missions against what I remember the most right now that I'm trying to work out is with the mantids, the local indigenous mantids on Mars. And just knowing that I was, you know, put in that role to become a perpetrator myself. It's part of the programming. It's absolutely part of the programming. And those are some of the hardest memories for me to find my way into. And slowly I am, but it's also, it's been hard. It's been really hard. I could share something relevant to this, the memory retrieval in Mars and things. Now there's some new information that came up in this past early November, actually. This began to come through for me. Yeah. My memory fields around these battles are actually tied up with memory fields of a psychic twin that I worked with out there. And I had no idea of this until about a month ago. And it's been shocking because on other interviews, I remember, I don't know if it was Journey to Truth or where, I was asked, did you ever have a counterpart that you were working with out there in the programs? And I was like, no, I don't have anything like that. I don't know anything about that. And then this was it was November 6th. I was walking out on some land I go to that's very away from EMF, and it's very remote north of here. And I was thinking about just kind of idly walking along at sunset, right? And stars are coming out. And I'm thinking about the Mantid Labyrinth, where we had missions looking for the Mantid elders. We were trying to get at them. And as my mind was kind of just sloshing through that, I felt a male presence behind me, not in human form, but in the etheric. So in other words, not a guy like creeping up on me behind me, but that sounds scary, but I felt a presence, and it was protective, and I knew it was an SSP guy energy, and he minded his manners, and I felt his energy field like around me, and it was neutral. It wasn't positive or negative per se. And he said, after a while, what I got out of that night was, he said, you're a hero. You saved my life. And I just was like, first of all, I'm not a hero of anything, but maybe I saved your life. I don't know. I don't know who you are. But I could see his whole all the details of his hair and the strawberry blonde kind of, he's my age. So I was seeing him as he is now, and he's still alive. This isn't, the energy field of somebody who's still living is different than somebody who's passed away and no longer in the body. His t-shirt, his jeans, the moccasins, and his face was all pixelated though. So I got a name. Anyway, it was just like, so this has slowly unfolded to reveal that we were groomed in mind control programming in the cages back on Earth together to become romantically involved and then to work as psychic counterparts together. And why I say his memory field and my memory field are bound up is because we shared in some of the dialogues I've had in the last few weeks with him, with his higher self. And telepathy does not work this way for me, in which I'm not sure what he said and what I said. They seem almost like they're the same thing. Anyway.
Totally. Yep. Yeah, I get that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, who said what? I don't know. So it's been like mind-blowing to learn about that relationship and how on missions we were part of a bigger team that even a small unit, I remember were 7 of us where we would all work together. And he and I were more of the psychic, doing psychic recon together for different missions from base, and accompanied by, we were all tricked out as, super soldiers. I don't love that word, but there you go. With whatever you're good at, they will, in the programs, build it out. They were amplified and build it out for you to become super, or how do we want to say it, amplifying the natural gifts that you already had, whether it be you're a strategist or you're kind of a big and thuggy or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. So it just was interesting to learn about, the being groomed to have a kind of romance with somebody, not just as a sort of partnership of business or however you might call it.
So that's interesting. So is this something that you are starting to see is common? Do you know the reason why they're grooming you to be intimate and partner? What's the reason for that?
Well, I had heard of this only in passing. I never paid much mind to it because I was like, I don't know. I got my hands full with everything else on my plate that I've experienced. To me, what I see with the two of us is that it made us, if you love somebody in that mission, you're going to get everybody's ass back alive. If you don't give a shit, they want you invested. It's how missions become successful. So they could manipulate us. They could manipulate us. If somebody was out of line, like if I did something bad, they might punish him, and likewise, vice versa. There were some pretty dark things and pretty sadistic things that happened where they would torment one of us to get back at the other. Or it was easy to manipulate that relationship and the commanders could get what they wanted in a different, easier way if we were really part of each other.
Okay, so when it comes to PTSD, right, they've done studies on this, that oftentimes the trauma can be worse for the person who witnesses the trauma versus the person who undergoes it. Mm-hmm. Do you think this one of the reasons why they do this as well is because they know that trauma will be way worse to that person watching it versus experiencing it?
Yeah, well, it's going back into where we first were bonded back in, they basically torture you. It's creating a trauma bond. And then it's the only thing, it's like this guy was the one thing that I even cared about out there. And so many years together, you would do anything for them. And then to watch them, I know they, I can't, they used sexual sort of torture on me and made him watch. That kind of thing. Can you imagine your partner, your husband, your wife, somebody you love, and watching that happen? It's horrible. It's like what you're saying is like the survivor's guilt. And he has come to me and said, how can you ever forgive me for what happened out there? Because bad things, we were tricked and deceived and all of these things regularly, not knowing sometimes what was real and what wasn't real. But they would use the bond for sure. And he's carrying a lot of, he did something in the end that got me killed. And because of that, not being entirely his fault or his choice at all, but he's not forgiven himself. And I know he's having a tough time out there. I'm not exactly sure where he is. I have a general idea of location, but I've certainly not met him in person. I'm most curious.
Wow. So it's like, you think about just our own general lives to the average person who does that not have anything to do with the secret space program. It's hard enough just to go through your regular life experiences and heal and forgive and be able to let go. But when you add on this layer of, 20 years in the secret space program and doing things that your then memories are gone, but yet you still hold the trauma frequency somewhere deep within, like that can be very difficult to navigate when it comes to healing and being able to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a troubled community. I mean, all of us have, understandably, I mean, we've gone through horrible things, like the kind of trauma that you can't, I mean, that some of it comes in and I'm just like, I got to take time out for myself to kind of work with it. Or it tends to come up, like my memory stuff opens when, or I tend to remember things when I don't have as much on my plate. And I have a safe cushion from which to regard whatever's coming through and to work with it and integrate it. Because some of it's, I mean, a lot of it is, I wish I could, impart nicer stories about these programs. And there are some good memories if we can kind of divorce the whole scene from it being what it is. There's some piloting is happy memories for me, piloting and flying a craft. But there's, like I said, I wish there was a way to have a happier ending with some of these stories. And the happy ending is that I'm alive and I'm able to talk about this from a fairly regulated vantage point. I'm not falling apart. I'm not in an institution. And I think I've had a lot of help from my light team, my guides, and my higher self to pull through so that I could be not quite so undone by everything. I mean, my health is definitely, like I said, my health is, my body's been through a lot.
Well, I think for those of us who understand the higher light realms and understand that we're not alone and we have a lot of help and assistance galactically, just even individually, that, it's great to lean on that, to utilize it. Mm-hmm. And I know I've done so in my own journey and it makes a huge difference. Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, when you talk about like this Mars memory that kind of started to come back about this combat with the mantis, the mantid beings, when you first came on our show, or I should say my show now, so I still go back to that. But back in, 3 years ago, you came on for the first time and you had a mantis guide. Mm-hmm. And so what do you think, is there any kind of connection there between the combat and that guide, or is there any kind of correlation there?
Yeah, Nemo.
Yeah, Nemo.
Nemo and I have been a little distant. He's still around, sort of. We need to talk. He's from a different, not all the mantids come from the same place with the same frequency, with the same agenda. So he feels like, and has said, he's not of the same, it's not the same group or the same, and it's not the same dimension. It's dimensionally different. So it's somewhat separate. And within the experience on Mars, I had mantids in the programs who also felt like they were on my side. It's really, I mean, it gets to be, it's complex to sort out in my own mind. Like, the mantids that were there natively on Mars, they never wanted to fight us, but they realized that we weren't going to play nice once we got there. So they started to retaliate. I mean, they had much higher, I guess I would say, higher tech in other ways than we would necessarily think of technology, not weaponry and craft per se, but other things, other ways of working with their minds and evading us or
What dimension was this all happening in?
Well, this is just 4D, fourth dimensional beings on Mars, the mantis that I'm talking about there with the program. But they had, like I mentioned this in my last video that I think you might have watched on my channel, was that we would be going into this is still what I'm trying to unpack more precisely. It involves my, like I just call him my twin. I don't have a better word for it. But the caverns, I call it the Mantid Labyrinth, and they had this very elaborate upper dimensional, high frequency dwelling place underground that they seem to have gotten from, it was created by even more advanced beings who had been long gone from the area, who seemed a lot bigger. When we were down in there, there was an opulence to that place that was really far out, but it created a kind of frequency fence that made it difficult for like just kind of peons like us with our 3D, that's why we had the psychic capacities to see how we could diffuse that frequency fence that they had throughout. Like it was a very high frequency. And if you weren't matched at that frequency, like an electric fence, it could kill you. As a kind of defense, I guess I would say. So it's very interesting kind of technology. That's what I mean about high tech.
So super high frequency. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of like, it's kind of, there's obviously, you and I were talking before the show, there's just a lot that's starting to come forth around the importance of understanding frequency and how to use it, just in our own ability to be empowered, with whatever it is that we want to create here. So I have a really good question in the live chat, but did you want to, before I get to it, did you want to talk about the new information that's come through around the programs?
That was really it. I wanted to talk about him because that was just, it's been really mind-blowing unpacking this and getting continually new information about him and our relationship, and that he's still alive and that he's still like, that we're about the same age. Like, it's just crazy because I always feel like I don't know anybody. I don't remember anybody from out there. Like, it's weird where I'll have like these, like all the humans are like, I can see them, but their faces are all like pixelated. I don't recognize anybody.
So I wonder if he's picking up on you.
I think he must be. Because, well, it's tough to say, isn't it? Because the higher self can be talking to me, right? Somebody's higher self can be talking to you and maybe they're not conscious of everything that's going on, right?
That's what I'm wondering, if his actual physical self is conscious of some of the...
I know that he's working on memory retrieval. He said to me that he's not as far along as I am, and I think his life has been pretty like straight jobs, more family stuff, more like in the system, in the matrix more. And now he's at a place where he can start delving into all of it, but it can really dishevel you. I mean, it's really a mind fuck, excuse me, but yeah. But
well, okay, so because I didn't want to depart from there until we got all of the information there. So okay, well, I know you and we also wanted to talk about the importance of getting out of black and white beliefs and thinking right now, and this is a beautiful question that I think can lead us into it. From Janice Whitlock, saying, talk to us about the relationship between the dark forces and the light and non-duality. So,
well, Janice, that's a good one.
I think it's a really great question. So thank you, Janice, for that. So how would you describe the relationship between the dark forces and the light?
It's like a trick question. Yeah, totally a trick question. Well, from the vantage point of the programs, and what we're kind of doing now is like, the light forces are trying to win and take our planet back from the dark forces. But in my view, it would be more about, it's like we integrate each other and come into more of a union.
You took the word right. I was going to say integrate. I was like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So important.
Yeah. But moving beyond the power over and black, white, good guys, bad guys, light and dark thing. And of course we want the light. I've had enough of the dark forces manipulating myself and my own life, my early life with all of this, right? And what's playing out here, the charade of nonsense in our surface world now. But it's coming into unity and moving beyond this side or that side, and understanding that it's all coming in as this divine teacher to show us the way back into out of our spiritual impoverishment and into our divine sort of legacy, which is, it's beyond any moniker of light and dark in my view. Yeah.
I know, and it can be difficult to break free of some of that because it's a program and it's being programmed into us, I think, from all different kinds of sides here. But I guess because we can see that there has definitely been a lot of evil deeds being done and being done still today, that many of us just can't even comprehend how it's still going on. You know, how is this allowed? For anyone who does their own research, you start to understand why it's happening. But you also, in order to really understand everything, you have to be able to step away from that viewpoint of duality. It's not that it's not real, it's part of it, but it's only half the part, because you have duality and then you have non-duality. And it can be difficult to separate yourself, or I don't even want to say separate yourself, but pull yourself out of it enough to give yourself space to have the non-dualistic viewpoint.
That has totally saved me. It saved my, I didn't really come into deep memory retrieval on all this and couldn't remember a lot until I had, my spiritual path is what I would call non-dual. So whatever arises in that moment, whatever day it is, whatever shitty thing or whatever wonderful thing is happening to you, it's all the teacher. That's all there is. It's not this or that, good or bad. It's just what's happening. So I had a very strong foundation over many years of practice, and I do mean meditation and deep spiritual journeying, before I had that under my belt, and I'm so grateful that I kind of wrote that into the script before I came into these big tidal waves of, jarring things that would come back to me from my past, to allow me to see the bigger picture. So look from the wide view, step back away from Earth into stellar space, look back at the planet look at the little Earth globe, see the polarity theater playing out here. You picked a ticket. Which one did you get, light or dark? Well, you look at it, I work in the Akashic records. So we're always looking at the journey of the soul and what we're playing out at a much bigger level here.
Okay, one thing first. I just want to note, she said globe, not flat, when it comes to the Earth. But also, from your case, so you're a perfect person to actually help people understand this, because if there's anyone who can show the importance of moving into that non-duality perspective from someone who has suffered at the hands of pedophilia, human trafficking, just all sorts of perverted, disgusting things, that have been perpetrated against you and other children that you witnessed. How can you help people understand the importance of, how did you move away from that to and how did that help you? Because, it can be it can really be hard to look at that stuff and be like, there is just, that darkness needs to go. It needs to not be here anymore at all. And what do you say to that and how to move through that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a stage on the journey. It's absolutely, did you hear what I said about, I ran away from this stuff really hard for decades until my life is starting to collapse because I wasn't working with my material, my shadow stuff. It's a waypoint along, it's a place to be until you move on from. For me, well, like I said, my vantage point is that I had a certain spiritual awakening and foundational understanding about all this before it started getting really hot and heavy. So it allowed me to kind of step back and like you say, is there some spaciousness from which I can view this from a bigger perspective, and not, for me, it was okay, so I haven't entirely, I've definitely gone through my stuff of hating the perpetrators and, all of that, and being, moving through the victim consciousness stuff and into personal sovereignty. That's the journey into empowerment for me, at least from my own vantage point, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's understandable where you're going to allow yourself the time to be in that dark place with all of that difficult emotion coming through for you. It's a normal part of the process, but it's not going to be that you don't have to be there forever.
Yeah, no. And okay, so I got a bit of a download while you were talking, and it was this idea that I think, even when I think back to my own experience of being able to come to a place of forgiveness for my perpetrator for, that one act of sexual abuse when I was 5, 6 years old, being able to get to that point, I believe that, there's a depth of healing that is available to us through some of these experiences. And I'm not saying that you have to go through something horrible in order to understand it, but there is something about being able to find your way back to the light, and what are the skills that you receive through that experience. And I believe that, so many of us are going through this ascension program where we're, this is maybe your last incarnation here, and you're going to be moving on to somewhere else. And perhaps where you're needing to go is to go somewhere to like take these healing skills with you to teach other civilizations, and bring those through you into your next life. I think there's like some deep teaching moments here that are very unique to this planet.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And this, I've said this on a lot of interviews, like this was part of my script. Like for me, I think I wrote all of this for myself so I could experience it and understand it really deeply to help undo the trappings of all of this depravity in our world. I think that's just kind of what get your ticket at the door. Oh, I got that ticket.
Well, I remember you were on one of my because you've been on a few times on the podcast, and there was one time where you revealed to us that you've been helping with, I guess, some people who are working, like who are interested in, and you would guide a healing session for helping off-world beings are coming to receive healing through your channeling, and also those who would be assisting in the work, helping you. So it doesn't seem to me that far off that there's great healing teachings that are available to us through these experiences, but we have to be able to get past the black and white.
Yeah. And I have, oh God. Yes. I always say, I feel like I'm like the little poster child for like, now I have a friend who's a mantid. Now I have a friend who's a ant being who the ant beings were part of my like abduction crew in childhood. Oh, now I have a friend who's an Anunnaki, and so now I'm going to tell this because I can't not share this. It's part of like what's been happening recently. And it's about this like, don't make it black and white, like make the space really open so you can receive with an open mind what is happening. I had a visit from a tall gray about, I don't know, this has also been like in probably the past month, right? And we had a conversation, and I was like, I know I called this in so I could learn something. It wasn't like, oh, I'm coming to do bad, scary things and, be the typical Orion Gray. However, he is an Orion Gray. His name is Six. And I'm learning some things from him that, let's see, let me make this really short. I feel like there is a liberation of some of these Orion Grays going on in our solar system where they're getting kind of, if this is getting into duality, light and dark, but the dark leaders of the Grays seem to be running out of power, and it's disrupting the Six as part of a group of light that are, he said, we, in more eloquent words than this, but there's always been, some of us who wanted to think for ourselves, and because of this particular hive mind type of programming for us, we weren't allowed to do that. And now some of us, because the leadership is absolutely falling apart, are coming together, and we think you can win, we think you can succeed. And he's been kind of showing me some other things. So I'm making it overly brief and short, and there's a lot more subtle nuance.
I'm pretty sure the people in the audience don't want you to be brief and short right now.
I'm like aware of it, the time. But it's been the point I want to make about it is more that when he first came in, I was like, what the F are you doing here? Get out of here. I'm done with the Grays. Like, I don't have any time for this. My father's a Zeta hybrid. He used to come into my bedroom with the Grays, and they would do things to me when I was little, prepping me for the programs. and I'm very well aware from all of my, clients who've been messed with by the Orion Grays for a really long time. First of all, not all Grays are from Orion. They're not all the Orion group. There's lots of different cultures of Gray. There's many different varieties of Gray. They're kind of on my shit list, but I was like, I don't really want to talk to you. I think I did need to talk to him because I needed to learn a little bit, open my mind over a couple other times where we chatted, to learn something new and to trust what I know they can be extremely duplicitous, but the things that happened and the signs he showed me in real time, to prove, some fidelity to what he was saying, they landed pretty well with me. I don't think I was being tricked. I think he was being honest about, the path of this particular group. And I think it bodes well for what may be evolving for some of these groups, is if we open our minds to help, we create that vibration. Can they step into it? Can we make a space big enough to accommodate that some of these really dark, the perpetrators can step into the light again? Is that a possibility for our minds? Because if it is a possibility in our minds, then it can become so. That's all.
And this is what's so okay. I think this is one of the most powerful parts of being able to move away from the black and white thinking, because it truly limits the potential of available possibilities to us. And if we're so dead set on seeing something as dark and evil, do we ever allow space for that dark and evil to alchemize and transmute into something of light? And and we can think of like, well, that has nothing to do with me, but it has everything to do with us because it's part of our reality and we're witnessing, which means we're co-creating it. So in what aspect, how are we prolonging the darkness to be here, so to speak, in the fact that we are actually not even allowing the darkness to absolve itself? And I think this is something that we have to really think about, because if we truly want to see things get better, we have to understand that you can't just eliminate the darkness. That's not how it works. That's not how energy works. You don't just destroy something. Energy can't be, created, destroyed. It's just constantly changing and shifting and transmuting and moving into different forms. And it's, so if we understand that, we can work with this and give all darkness the opportunity to absolve itself into and to move into light, with also the same understanding and knowledge that there is absolute beauty in the darkness. And Janice, yes, the dark forces or the dark energy or the dark experience, whatever you want to call it, is here to teach us. Yeah. It is very much a teacher, just as much as the light is a teacher for the dark. And so being able to step away from the duality is an important part to be able to gain a bigger perspective, to allow ourselves to see beyond the limitations that we're currently being programmed with. And it can be very difficult because we can get very attached to what our beliefs are or what we want things to be like, because when we start to get attached to it, we start to build our identity around it. And then all of a sudden, as soon as our identity is built around it, that's when you really have a hard time being able to let go of that or be able to expand beyond it, because that means part of you isn't true. And it can become very difficult. But this idea of being able to really allow ourselves to see things in new ways, I think, the struggle becomes, well, if I allow myself to see the potential, does that mean that all of the crimes or the corruption, whatever it might be, gets a free pass? No, that's not it at all. That's not how things work. But if we want it to actually transmute, we have to be willing to hold space for that and to be willing to hold that portal of potential open for it.
Yeah, very much so. I think that's a beautiful teaching. I mean, that's a teaching for our time, right? Like that's what we're looking at right now. And we win. We're not letting anybody off the hook. We become more expansive and vast and connect with more of our divine consciousness when we allow for that potentiality to come into reality.
And with the higher lights, like the higher light energy and frequencies coming into the planet now, with where we are in the galaxy and the photon belt and everything coming from the galactic center, We're coming up soon to the sun and the earth and the galactic center being aligned, which happens, of course, every year. There's always beautiful energies coming in at that time. But, that light, the higher the light that comes in, I think we forget. We sometimes think, oh, that just means the darkness goes away, but truly, it's allowing us to hold that light coming in. It's giving us that capacity to embrace it, to hold it. And so there's beauty in the darkness. It's a beautiful teacher. It obviously doesn't feel like that when we're going through it, but when we can get a little bit further beyond the most difficult part of it, we start to see the richness of the dark journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's well said. It's really well said. This is all really needed right now, I feel. So thanks we get to riff on this tonight. Yeah.
Well, what would you say before we end the show and close off? What kind of message would you like to leave the audience with in regards to how we move forward at this current time? I
mean, take these teachings to heart. Where can you apply this in your life? What are you struggling with now? And how can the space of your mind, your heart, your beliefs be maybe just a little bit bigger to accommodate a different outcome that you hadn't thought of yet? Is that a possibility? And that requires us getting sort of backing off the reins of control sometimes, which is, we're loath to do that sometimes, but where can you just create that space for a different possibility, a different outcome than the one you thought? That teaching is also all around us. And every one of us has a place to put that into practice right now.
Indeed. And I just there's one question here from Falcon Paz Peace. Have you heard dark versus light, good versus bad? They come from the same source. All lessons and experience, learned that during an ayahuasca ceremony. What's your view on it?
Yeah. I mean, they do. It's a production of yes, they come from source energy for sure. Yeah.
Everything comes from source. Everything, even the things we don't like.
Everything is an expression of the life force. I mean,
yeah. Well, you've got a big event coming up next year. Would you like to share with the audience what you've got going on?
Yeah, sure. We'll be at the Secret Space Secret Space Conference coming up early May next year. It's sponsored by Journey to Truth with Aaron and Tyler, and I and some other SSP folk will be there live in bodies. And you can also get a ticket online. It's just outside St. Louis in a really pretty area. So that's coming up. I think it's the 2nd through 5th of May. And I'm certainly back doing live sessions myself, so you can book readings and coaching and galactic attunements and so on with me now. That wasn't the case for some time, so it's nice to be working live with people again. Yeah.
And for anyone in the audience who hasn't worked with Rebecca, I give her my full endorsement. She's been an integral part of my journey for the last 3 years now. I can't believe it's been 3 years.
I know how that happened.
It's so crazy, So, all right, guys. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your information. Guys, head on over to her YouTube channel and watch her most recent video if you haven't yet, to get a much more in-depth description of some of the memories that she has recovered from or has recovered and moving through. Thank you so much for sharing your light, Rebecca. It's such a pleasure to see you and be here with you. And to the audience, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Next week, I will have Consuelo on, and it will be live on the 1221 portal of the winter solstice. So looking forward to seeing